2008 server. We run on every Windows 7 as well as server-based Windows operating systems. The PDF compressor itself, just to give you a little bit understanding on what the architecture is looking like, is a Windows service. This Windows service does really everything, even if there's nobody logged into the computer, even if this computer is headless, as we say, no monitor sitting in the server room. You feed it through folder structures, you feed it files over the network or from a hard drive, and it has a GUI, as I said before. You see the PDF compressor running down here with this small icon waiting for things to do. It's red, it doesn't do anything, otherwise it's green. And when you double click that, you'll see that normally, yes, here we go, a GUI opens. This GUI is an extra part of the PDF compressor, and this GUI is used to set up everything. It does set up jobs. A job is normally something that is based on an input folder and an output folder. I tell you all the specifics later on when we configure jobs. And a job has individual settings per job, and this is what we call a job list in here, a list of jobs, in other words. The PDF compressor is also having some extra tools that I might want to show you at this point. So when you go into options here, very high level, you can access log files. Okay, that's when you run it day by day. You can take a look at log files that everything is going on. Not only manual, you can also access those log files throughout the processing by your other process steps in order to find out what the progress is, where we are at, what's next, whether there is some unreadable input files or other errors or something like that. So you can use that in order to move forward in your workflow. This here is also used to control the service itself. One probably more technical hint, though this should not end up being a support session, but one more technical hint at this point, because people continue to run into trouble there. When you are not yet a professional and user of the PDF compressor, take a look at that. This is running, this is the Windows service, and it default runs with the local system account and rights. So when you're logged into the computer like I am here today with your personal credentials, you might be perfectly able to use the Explorer and access a network share. PDF compressor running under the local service account might not be able to access that network share, and people start wondering. No problem, shoot us an email at support@LuraTech.com and they'll figure it out immediately for you. But now that you know, just add your personal credentials here or some other credentials that have the access rights that you need, and all of a sudden this runs very perfectly. Yeah, regarding the configuration, I showed you that. I'm going to return to that a little later. And here, also interesting, you can take a look at your license, see when you have page-based licenses, what's left, what's used. You can see not only one, but you can load many licenses in here. Basically see what you got and get a little bit of an overview on how hard you were on using your resources in here, and then also managing licenses and importing them and so on. Okay, that's rather easy. Another thing that is in here is PDF compressor has an online access to check for updates. Here, good. That's not a great thing. That's not special. But what is a very oftenly run into scenario is that the PDF compressor is running on a separate network that probably has no access to internet at all. Thus, it can't check for update, it can't update, it can't display the version history when we drag it from the server and something like that. Practical hint, really, and that's what it's about today. Practical hint. If you're the one responsible for running the PDF compressor and it's running on a server somewhere, you might not go there and take a look whether there's a message box telling you that there's an update or something. Install just a demo version of the PDF compressor looking like that here. Doesn't need a license, it's just the demo version. It doesn't expire, it doesn't do anything, but what it does, it checks for updates. And on your local computer where it's installed, it gives you a hint there's an update. You can look at what's new and then decide whether you drag the installer or load the installer down and walk over to the server room and update it. So just a simple hint, but help many people to organize their work a little easier. Okay, some monitoring I talked about. Okay, so logging licenses, multi-core processing is something that you see down here. You always have an idea of what's going on at the moment, just nothing. You can see how loaded your cores are. This is a 4-core license here, or it's a license that is switched to use 4 cores. And you see when we start running something a little bit about progress and what's going on down here. If you want, you don't need that. It's just for monitoring purposes. Now let's probably jump into how we can set up jobs and what modes are there to use the PDF compressor. The first mode is the so-called batch mode, and that's probably the most straightforward one. Very easy to grasp, I think. When we open up the properties of a specific job like this one here, you get these properties, and you have something like an input folder, and you might have optionally something like an output folder, or place the resulting output files into the input folder, which ends up in a mess. But you can do that. In production, you probably won't. But however, you can do that. And this is batch. You have a batch in here. You start it, it converts, and it's done. Second way of doing things is using a watched folder, which is way more practical in scanning environments, as we talk about today. You check that folder that you have here every so-and-so seconds or something, and we monitor everything that's coming in, process it according to all those settings in here, and output it to a folder structure that is defined or starting here in the output folder. It processes subfolders, and it creates the same subfolder structure if you want that, if you set it like that, in the output folder, so that you can really convert everything from to. Another way of doing things is, now we talked about batch, we talked about watched folders. The third way of doing is not using jobs in here at all. And not using jobs in here at all is the so-called job list processing. This is different, a different mode. We when we set it up, the job list processing down here, we agree on a folder again where PDF Compressor is looking for job tickets. Job tickets are ASCII files. They describe just everything that you. I'm sorry. Yeah, right. That's true. They describe just everything that you can set up here. So every box in here, every check mark in here has a representation in that ASCII file. And you can use your scan software or another part of your process to create those ASCII files, write those ASCII files. And in those ASCII files, you tell us where to look for documents, where to put those documents, and also all the other settings, how to process the documents. And we return to that later on how it can help you granularly structure and automate your document conversion needs, especially your scanned documents conversion need in this case today here. So job list processing is the third mode. And now for our users out there, there's an announcement to make, and it's pretty limited to this audience here and the German audience this morning. I haven't told anybody else so far. We will come up with a .NET API that is part of the PDF compressor then still this year in the version 7X, and it will allow you to also really completely programmatically control the PDF compressor with a much tighter integration into your surrounding workflow components or into your even applications if you want to use it like that. So that's a little bit an exclusive Outlook information. API.NET based is about to come to remote control the PDF compressor programmatically. Now, the job lists are, I probably want to show you a job list. The job lists, this job list in here, can be exported for backup purposes, can be imported here. Again, it can be appended. So when you are sitting on your own computer, setting up all the parameters for a job that you want to add to your production server later on, you can export that single job here, walk over to the computer that is the production workstation, and then append that job to the list to add it to your production lists and to production jobs. And yeah, to take a look at one of those job lists again, this is one down here. I open it up and you see it's pretty technical, no wonder, but pretty technical audience here anyway today. And for every entry in here, we get an entry in here starting with 0. It has a name and it has all the settings, and some of them might be familiar, for example, the input path. And yeah, you can use that as a template. Just export it, use it as a template, and then only change by your workflow what you need to change and keep everything else static so that you do not have to write out the whole thing every time. Okay. That's about that. Now let's really, after we understand how the PDF compressor can be used in environments or integrated into your environments, now let's really look into how it is used to convert and process scan documents. And the first job in here is exactly about that. So let's open up the properties again. And the properties, I showed you the input folder. You can still select in here what kind of formats to pick up in there. In this case, it's a raster image, it's and probably PDFs. You might not want to pick up Word files when you convert to scan, set up a job pretty much for scanning, but you can do that. You can use combined jobs, but I'll return to that in the second part of the webinar in 2 weeks from now, talking about this and talking about the automatic mode that does allow for mixed conversion of scans and more digital and whatever altogether. So input folder, including subfolder, input format types, and then going to output. And here you select on the output tab not only where to put it, but also what to create. For example, you can use this to convert a scan PDF file already to a super compressed searchable PDF-A to U file, or something like a PDF 1.4 if you need that. Your customers sometimes demand what you need to do, and therefore it's all in here. So you output it to something that you define here, and then the next thing is again about how to organize your production. You can move files or even delete if you want, including the folders. Files from your input tree, let's say, of files, directories of files, into a success folder as well as into an error folder to be ready to restart if you want to stop something and start it again. It's not processed all over again if you organize it a little bit. You can even rename input files, and if you guys are able to tell me what that's good for, I'm here to learn. Renaming input files, okay? Of course, you can name structure your output files, and I understand that, but however, you might want to tell me. Here's an OCR tab, and you see OCR will be applied. It's no secret that this OCR is based on the ASCII engine, and by the way, we recently updated it also to the ASCII 11 version, so we keep it up to date all the time, and it's part of your maintenance agreement to get all the minor and major upgrades of the PDF compressor, and that includes upgrades and updates and whatnot of the components we use in there as well. You can do desk queuing, you can do auto page orientation in here. You can output to additional formats, I don't know, into plain text or XML for special imports, as well as specifics like Alto if you have to do Mets Alto, and I know some of you do Mets Alto for the libraries and so on. It's all in here, and you can just use it. Embedding I return to a little later, and then of course compression. I was having a slide on compression. MRC is the term for the layer compression that creates those super small files, and the settings are just here. Here's some advanced settings where you can take a look at, for example, there was a big stress around JBig2 a couple of months ago that some characters were matching our tool since years uses lossless for that, so no character damage is in here. But if you want to do lossy, maybe ask the support team whether it's a good idea or not, but you can. All settings in here. So for those who are users, you see that this is recently reorganized and I think structured better than before. And what's left on the general page is another concept that might be interesting, the priority management. So you have in a, say again, scan service facility or something like that, you have several jobs running all at the same time. obviously. But then there is this job that runs for at least 3 months until it's the deadline, and it's easily good enough to run it through the nights or whenever there's idle time on the computer or something like that. So what is it? It's a low priority job. Give it a low priority. And then there's this other job where every document that is shipped to you until 3 p.m. the day before, digital mail, has to be in the customer's document management system by 11 a.m. next morning. That's a high priority job, and you don't have to start, stop, and manage and balance yourself. You can use that priorities here pretty much to automatically have the server balance it out in the way you need it. A new feature, again, also in version 7, tiny one, but still based on customer demand, is you can now also have time scheduled processing and say, start that job on a Friday evening and only go for 2 days and then stop working on it or something like that. Okay, about time to do something. What do you think? So let's start a job and see what happens. First of all, let's see what is in that job. And this is the folder. It's just a bunch of TIFF files in there as they come out of the scanner in color and black and white and whatnot. Now, let's start the job. And I told you about the monitoring here. You see down there that some of these documents are single page. Some of them might turn out to be multi-page documents in here. And you see it switches between page, that's the compression and formatting step, and OCR, we switched on the OCR, that's the OCRing step. And this 2008 server operating system is running on a poor MacBook, so you might not expect the super highest performance in here, but the average throughput time really is about a second or so. Might go up to 2 seconds per page when it is a complicated text on it that the OCR takes some time, but in the meantime, those computers are really doing a very good job, and you can always add more CPU cores or whatever if you need to speed it up, and our customers are just doing that. Now, what came out of it? Obviously, there is a bunch of TIFF files in this, an uncompressed, super-sized, uncompressed color scan of an invoice. Sorry for the German word. It's an invoice sample or something like that. And what's coming out of that is a compressed, really small. Again, we open it up, full color and searchable PDF A2U document as we just set it up in the settings of the PDF compressor. When you take a look at this here, it's also pretty standard in every PDF reader out there. The so-called layers that we use in order to do the compression, as you saw that in the slide, and you can use it in here and even switch off the background layer, have a crisp and clear view on the document. You can even switch off the text color, and you have the black and white middle layer that we treat lossless, so no net information is lost, even though we do a very, very high compression ratio in here. Okay, so that's basically, really basically how we run things through the PDF compressor. Having said that, there's of course options that influence the size, influence the features and so on in the PDFs that are output from the PDF compressor. And I have a couple of samples in here. Again, now you are familiar already with this thing here. That's the same invoice, again uncompressed as we had it before. And what I did here now is that the let's say an evolution of what you can do with scanned documents using the PDF compressor. The first thing in here is really something that is standard. So normally when you take a scan to PDF, you end up with a JPEG per page and frame that into, or put that into a PDF frame, or frame. And this is exactly that. So you end up with quite some bits still, not terrible, but quite some bits still to keep up the quality. And I do not have to open all that files. They all look the same. That's the idea here. And you end up with a scan to PDF file. Now, no secret that we are preferring to apply the layer compression, the MRC compression to it. And you see you end up with a way smaller file when you, for example, convert it to PDF, in this case A1, where the color layers of that compression are compressed in JPEG, and the black and white is used for JPEG2 or something like that. It's details. So it's an MRC layer compression. In this case, even in PDFA, could as well be in normal PDF. And it's very small, but in order to tell something about the compression, you also have to look at the quality. And as I said before, same quality, all these documents look the same. What you can still do on top of that is use PDFA2 or some more advanced compression schemas. In this case, color layers are compressed with JPEG 2000 and then embedded into a PDF file, which is again total standard. Every viewer will open it, no problems, no hurdles in here. And it's even smaller, 32K, it's just 6K, but a certain amount of percent smaller. This is the smallest, as small as it probably can get, given that it has to have the same quality. And what we see in here, again, also is it's not searchable. So I can't mark up any text or something like here. And if I would type in a phrase, it wouldn't show up. So the next logical step to do with this super small scanned file, full color span file, is to add OCR to it. And I did that, again, as an evolution step, let's say, and I end up with a high quality, again, PDFA, archive ready, high compressed and searchable document. And of course, that's again a little bigger. That's natural because we have to add all that characters into there, which are hidden, but still in there. And when you open up that document again, it looks the same. Just this time it's searchable. You can copy, paste, or search in that document. A little bit the evolution of compression and features in PDF, scan to PDF. Another thing that is important when you process scanned documents is, let's say the next thing that comes up is metadata. Every customer of a scan service bureau might demand some sort of metadata. Sometimes it's as small or as simple as an accompanying Excel spreadsheet holding some information. Sometimes it's as complex as adding Dublin core based metadata into a private extended XMP schema. What I want to say about that is PDF Compressor has the features to organize your scan shop, period. So it also handles XMP and metadata approaches that PDF can take. So next topic is not about compression or searchability, it's about metadata. And those metadata, and I might open up something here with my little notepad here again. This metadata is XMP metadata is the standard. It's an ISO standard again that is used in PDF, which is also an ISO standard in the meantime. And this is the way on handling metadata today in today's PDF world. So what you see here is something like an XML, and it has keywords in here, and it has some title of the document, like saying where's the content, keywords, box red empty, and so on. This is a typical XMP metadata file. Now, how to get that into a PDF? And that's done with the embedding tab in here. When we take a look at that, XMP metadata embedding is even an own button in here. Same as, by the way, is bookmarks and OCRs when they come from external sources. XMP metadata, you can just embed it, and then how to tell what file to embed where. And we do use file name pattern and file name matching. And now when you take a look at that and you are not yet a super advanced user and don't know that, this is a very important concept. You have wildcards everywhere in the PDF Compressor settings in here. Those wildcards are used to transport data from A to B or to structure things. In this case, and there's always this blue button when it gets complicated, you just hit it and you get an inline help that tells you what all these wildcard characters mean. And %F is the input file or input directory name. Okay. In this case, also, we do say embed the XMP metadata to that image or to that outgoing PDF for that image that matches the file name of the image by having the same file name .xmp. So that's something you can do. There's other ways to do that. You can, if you have already PDF, move it from input PDF to output PDF. You can add a list of input files in there automatically, and so on and so forth. But that takes us a little far for those 45 minutes. But just want to introduce to you how you can do that. And the result then of doing so is a file like that. It's obviously an empty red box. It is a PDFA to B file in this case. It has the layers, not important in this case. And what it also has is, sorry again for the German here, it means files properties. It has our standard metadata in here that we read from the XMP file. You know, you remember where's the content, you remember the keywords that we gave it. This is standard XMP. That's the one that is defined in the PDF standard, saying author, title, and everything else. Now, your users might have private XMP extension schemas that we need to embed into the PDF files, and that's of course all doable with PDF Compressor as well. Same means as we took to do the standard XMP, just you can't view it in or display it in the standard Acrobat reader. You either need a tool or an Acrobat Professional or something like that to take a look at private extension schemas with XMP. Thing is, just keep in mind, it's all there if you need it in any kind of future job you need to do in your scan shop or something. Okay, that's probably about metadata, wildcards. Yeah, metadata and wildcards. Looking at the time, I might move forward to the next block of topics. By the way, don't forget, type in any questions you have just as they pop up in your mind, and I'm going to try to pick them up and answer them. Next block in here is also a very important topic in organizing scan facilities and scan productions. And I'm talking about barcodes. Barcodes are used in scanning day to day, and I can probably show you an example of why for those who don't know. Some of you might be bored now, but and because you do it every day, but some of them might not be. So allow me shortly to show that. When you do scanning, you normally do batch-oriented scanning. So you put 500 pages of paper into your scanner and run them through. But what you need as an output is obviously a set of multi-page, sometimes one, sometimes three, sometimes 100 pages, single documents in there out of that continuous stream of papers. And normally you use barcodes to structure that. Either barcodes like those here, printed or sticked like a sticker barcode, put on the documents while preparing them for scanning, or you use separator pages that you insert there and that hold your barcode and nothing else, and nothing of the document. PDF Compressor can handle it all. It can automatically also delete separator pages from output files. It can use inline barcodes sticked on here. It can use separator pages, as I said. It can read a variety of barcodes to use that, and it can use it for different purposes. And what purposes that are, we can definitely take a look in the job that I set up like that for that in order to show you. So first, our task in here is to split documents. Split documents says just split output PDF files whenever a new barcode is detected. Okay, that's easy. So you have a folder, 500 scanned images. Every time we see a barcode, we make a split and start a new PDF and add the pages that have no barcodes until the next barcode is detected. What about the file names of those? Again, we are seeing the wildcards down here. Output file renaming is used for that. You rename the file then, every single file that comes out of your batch, using the file name or the wildcards here again. And what we do in this case, just a sample, we use the original input file name. And if it's a folder containing scans, it's the folder's name that determines the output PDF file name. And we use a constant string, the minus in there, and we use a %v, which is the value of the last detected barcode that you can use all about the place here in order to structure your. So the first thing is split, rename it with a meaning that in this case even includes the barcode value. Now, where's the barcode settings? And this is a point where even after the restructuring of that, always get confused a little bit. Where do I click to set up where to find my barcodes and all this kind of stuff. This is still under OCR, because other than in Dockyard, we use a barcode engine based on the OCR in here, and that's why it slipped up to be in the OCR region. Now, one problem in using barcodes in scanning is you might all the time detect false barcodes or foreign barcodes, let's say. So your customers are not limited to stick and put and print barcodes on their documents, and they might really extensively do that all the time. Now, how can you organize your production when you have all these foreign barcodes? First and foremost, you might have the idea to just use a different barcode than your customers do, probably an exotic one, or even a more expensive one like a QR code or a data metrics code on there, or whatever kind of patch code you can use, and limit document separation just to that specific barcode. Or in this case, we just saw all the stickers are in the upper left corner. You say just look for barcodes in the defined region, which might be a rectangle somewhere on the pages. Then again, you can not only limit barcodes and use them, you can also use the results. I showed you the %V thing to add the barcode value somewhere. Again, everything that you determine throughout the processing, you can reuse using those variables and wildcards. In this case, it's even easier when you want to, for example, scan a folder full of scans and create a PDF as an output file. And that's something that starts into the idea of rich structuring documents, where every page of the scans is a page in the PDF file, but every time there's a barcode, you want to have a bookmark in the PDF file to adjust, for example, chapters inside a single document. It's just a mouse click away. Yeah. However, let's just quickly run it before time runs and see what's happening. So now this thing here goes through the pages, and it's pretty fast. It's just really reading some barcodes and no OCR, and read some barcodes. Oh, I'm gonna switch that back to normal here. PDF Compressor samples, barcodes, and here we were. You know, remember those 5 files, and the result is nothing special. It's 2 multi-page documents having the folder name as the file name minus the barcode value, something that starts 41 ending 05, and you see 41 ending 05, and it's a multi-page document that has no second barcode in it, because once the second barcode was read, it created a new document with the new barcode on it. So that's the basics about barcode processing. Again, if you are looking to structure your production even further, just shoot an email to support@luratech.com if you can't figure it out, because I'm pretty positive that the mode, the way you're looking for, can be handled if you take all these fancy options and advanced options into consideration to set the PDF compressor up for your specific way of using barcodes for structuring your scanned documents processing. Okay. Now that I'm left with 1 minute, I have to show you 2 more things, just as an example giving on how rich in terms of feature the PDF compressor is. Just when you have a demo version, take a look at it. When you have a version and you upgraded recently, take a look at it again and see what's all in there, or ask me for getting a demo version to play around with it a little bit. Something that is coming up again and again is security. Obviously, the security settings protect from printing, protect from changing and whatnot. It's all built into the PDF compressor and can as well be applied fully automatic, fully unattended automatically while processing the files. And you find security as well in the input folder, because we respect document open and document and change permission passwords, and I can't create a PDF to PDFA setup, for example, when the PDF says I am not to be changed. So if you have the open passwords, you enter them here, and now you might say again, well, wait a minute, every PDF has another password, and I have a list of my PDFs and the according passwords here, but I can't by hand put it all in here. No, you can't, obviously not. Use the job list processing, and I told you I come back to that. You can create from that file that I was just talking about, holding the directories or the file names as well as the passwords, you can create a job list that says this is the and just put the one document in that job list and say convert it this and this and this. Keep all the parameters as you want them standard, and just change the parameter document open password, for example, in every job list that you have there. Throw the job list at the PDF compressor, and it will open up every PDF, converting it with the according individual password. What you can, by the way, also use in, job list processing, what you can also use to structure individually, for example, metadata in here that you can not only use by XMP, but also in the simple way of putting it in here. You can do that by job list processing and individualize it per output file, for example. Another thing, just really, it's not important, but gives you an impression on how deep it is. Did you know that you can structure PDF files or give them parameters when you double click them and open them up in Acrobat Reader, that they appear in a certain way, opening up the thumbnails or not, opening up the bookmarks or not in an initial view, scrolling page by page or continuously, and so on and so forth. That's parameters you can put in the PDF. So what I'm going to say about that, and then I'm going to conclude here, is you're looking for features to structure your documents, to process PDF to your probably ever-changing customers' needs. Yeah, PDF Compressor is here to do it for you. It's really complete. It's rich. Okay, I'm running out of time. And not that I couldn't go on showing you PDF Compressor features and probably also more tips and tricks and whatnot around it. Just the time's over. And with that, I want to again encourage. I have a couple of questions here. Okay, first of all, 45 minutes is over for sure. So I want to say thanks a lot for those who have to leave. Thanks a lot. If there's anything, if you're interested in anything, if you're interested in talking, have a question, don't know how to do it, you can always call the LuraTech offices, you can call your salesman, you can write to support@luratech.com or call me or email me. My email address is there. The number is my mobile number. Just call me. Call our offices, as I said, and I'm happy to dive in deeper into your specific advanced use of PDF Compressor for scanned documents. Invitation before you leave, probably put it into your calendar. On September 4, I'm talking about processing and even more structuring of output and processing born digital files with the PDF compressor. There's just a new version out also for the users who have it. It's 7.1, and 7.1 holds a variety of new ways of converting, say, emails or Word files or whatever to PDF. Just listen in, put it in your calendar, register now for the September 4 webinar on second part of this webinar on converting born digital documents. Okay, time's over. Thank you, everybody. But for those who have some minutes left, I'm going to pull up a small number of questions here. So, oh yeah, that's a question from a user. The question is about the API that I announced to be coming up as a new feature. So to programmatically approach the PDF compressor or remote control the PDF compressor. Question really is that an extra license? No, it's not. It is part of your maintenance of your updates and upgrades, as you're familiar with since years. Last years, you got all the minor and major updates as part of your maintenance agreements, and the PDF compressor API will be just that, just an upgrade. And no extra payments, no extra option. The only option we have today and will have for the foreseeable future is the born digital option. This is an extra price, but everything else is in the base package of the PDF compressor. Okay, and that's probably the last question that came in here. Sorry, I started from the wrong side of the question list. Yeah, whether the presentation is available or not, of course, shoot me an email. Email is on the screen here, and I'm going to send you the presentation easily. The presentation in this case is just a little bit the shorter part of the webinar. What you can do is you can also shoot me an email and ask for the recording. I recorded the session and it will be made available for download at some point. Not sure whether it's publicly or not. Just shoot me an email, and I take care that you get the recording in the next couple of days of the full presentation, because the slides are a little limited here this time. Okay, here's another question that's probably a little complicated around the Windows service. I'm going to answer that by email. Then we have another question. Okay, yeah. The next PDF standards that are coming out. Interesting question, because LuraTech is also part of the ISO standardization around PDFA. So it's an interesting question. The question here is, are we going to support the next coming up parts and versions of the standard, of the PDF standard? Of course we do. We did it all the time in the last years. You might take that as an evidence that we do, and we are also supporting everything else that's coming out next. So what is coming out next might be also an interesting question for you. Just a little report from out of the standardization. We expect a so-called PDF 2.0 to come out of the standardization as the next big thing. It's heavily delayed. It's the ISO 32000, which you might know or not, which is the standard for the big broad PDF at the very moment. It's the second part of that, and that will be dubbed in the market as PDF 2.0. This is delayed, and it will come out late next year, as far as it is possible to forecast ISO work. But at least the group that we're involved with in the ISO, the committee that standardized it, is really planning for coming out with a second half year 2015 release of the PDF 2.0. That's a bigger thing. It changes a lot around forms processing and everything else in PDF. Also, some very basic stuff is changed, evolved, and yeah, LuraTech will support it. And I promise again, from day one, we do not support unpublished parts of PDF. We didn't do that in the past, and we are not going to do that in the future. But the day one ISO 32000 Part 2, or say PDF 2.0, is released, that will be the day that we send out an update of our software supporting that new version or a new part of the standard of PDF. No, PDFA, there's at the moment, there's 3 parts of the standard, 1, 2, and 3, obviously. A part 4 is not in the works at the moment. It's not in the works. It might get into the works once PDF 2.0 is out, as a follow-up work, and then again taking a look what's archiving ready in PDF 2.0 and whatnot, and that might end up being a PDFA part 4. But at the very moment, it ended a little bit, or it came to a stop in standardization with PDFA part 3. Okay. We're heading closer to an hour now, and I'm going to answer all the other questions here by email. No worries, you'll get all your answers. But really, this session is getting a little long. So I thank you again, everybody, for attending the session, especially those who stood long and listened to my babbling here. Thank you very much. Stay tuned for the next webinars. Join us on September 4. Shoot me an email if there's any question, any follow-up comment. I'm happy to go into discussion with you all. Thank you very much, and have a good day wherever you are. Thank you.